of them, but you do have a quorum right now.
Thank you, Craig.
Sure.
I guess we should just, normally John does the, I'll call this meeting to order. Thanks for everybody for taking time out of their day. Craig, is there the public involvement announcement? Should I read that out loud, or is that something that you do?
I'm happy to do that, sir.
All right. Go ahead. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. So all AMATS meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. In this case, the way we're doing this in this virtual world is we have a Teams Live running in conjunction with the Teams meeting that you folks all dialed into. The public with that will be able to ask questions in a chat box, and then we can recognize that they have a question. There's a bit of a lag between the Teams Live event. It's about 30 seconds or so. So typically we have to wait just a moment. But what we usually do is have a business item and presentation by staff or a consultant, and then we go to the committee to discuss it. And then the public is invited to comment. And then after that, the FAC, the Freight Committee, will take action on those items.
Thank you, Craig. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from November 4th that Mr. Cecil sent out earlier?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? I'll move to approve the minutes. Second from somebody.
Joe, I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, and this is Terry. Who did we establish is taking notes? Is that going to be me, or is somebody else taking notes? I don't mind taking them. I just need to know who's seconding these.
So, Mr. Chair, that would be great, Terry, if you could do that. I do have some quick notes here. I have two other things I did want to mention. I forgot to mention. We are recording this, so we'll have a recording available. In addition, we have a sign-in sheet in the chat in Teams Live. So if you'd be so kind as to go in there and just put down your name, rank, and serial number, that would be wonderful. It's voluntary information, but it's something that the feds like us to keep track of. In regards to moved and seconded, I had for the agenda, Mr. Rebuffo, seconded by Mr. Lindemood. And for the minutes, I had Mr. Michelle, seconded by, I believe it was Mr. Smith.
Correct.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So I think we got the minutes and we're back to the regular agenda. Let me go back to the main page here. So back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The next item of business is expected actions of the Freight Advisory Committee for 2021. And I brought this up at the last committee meeting. And since that time, I've been reviewing projects that are in AMATS, looking for any problem children or anything that might, get in the way of trucks moving the goods and services around the Anchorage Bowl. I haven't been able to identify too many of them that were problems that hadn't already been addressed by this committee. But I would like to just kind of open it up to the floor to hear what people have what expectations people have for this committee over the course of the year, and what do you think that we should spend our finite amount of hours working on in between meetings so we could be positively influencing the freight that's moving around Anchorage. Is there any major things that we should be tackling down at the port right now or anything like that?
Hi, this is Steve Rebuffo. Nothing going on down here that would fall under the purview of this group that isn't already being discussed. I can't think of anything new.
The only thing that's really on my radar right now, as far as maybe problem children in the Anchorage Bowl, is just I know that the Kinney Group, an engineering firm, sorry, I should learn to look at the camera, not at my picture at the bottom of the screen, is still working on the road study that is down by the port. I have not followed back up with them to see how that's going, but it was going to be an all-encompassing kind of study in regards to where the roads should go and any adjustments that they have. So before the next committee meeting, I'll definitely get with the Kinney Group and find out what stage they're at as far as their study goes before it actually goes into road design and things of that nature.
Hey, Chair Michelle, Dan Smith here. I just had a couple of business items that I wanted to throw out. That first being plans for a freight forum. If this group intended to do anything, I know 2021, there's still a lot of unknown whether or not the idea of doing that or doing it virtually can be discussed at some point. And then the only other thing on my mind that I wanted to maybe circle back to was that 3rd Avenue down there by Beans Cafe, just to make sure that that's kind of has been all put to bed with the narrowing down there. I think it has, but I just wanted to bring that up too, just to make sure if there's an update that we can get one.
Is the formal group still kind of together, Craig, or have they somewhat disbanded? With the municipality's actions on a different type of infrastructure as far as addressing the homelessness problem, I haven't heard anything about the 3rd Avenue recently.
As far as I know, that project is still ongoing. I can double check. Yeah, I can double check and get information back to the committee on that.
Okay, well, I'll follow up with you in the next couple of days, Craig, and we'll find out, and then we'll get that information out to the members. Thanks for keeping that on our radar screen, Dan. As of that, I think that there's not too many other actions. Feel free to reach out to me at any moment in time, or the next chair. I'll keep on using my man hours here at the Alaska Trucking Association to address any issues, no matter who wants to start sharing these meetings. With no other items that people would like to bring forward, on to the next one is the committee chair and vice chair elections. I was the chair last year. Can't remember who is the vice chair, but if there's any nominations or anybody who wants to step up to the chairmanship position, feel free to toss your name in the hat right now. And we're still a pretty tight-knit group, so it doesn't matter who's sitting at the top and who has to lead these meetings. Otherwise, I'll keep on doing it if nobody else wants to do it.
Hey, Craig, what do the bylaws say to address that? How many terms? I think Joe Michelle is an excellent option, and I'd like to nominate him, but I just want to make sure I understand how many terms he's eligible for.
That is a great question that I'm going to see how quickly I can get to the bylaws, which is probably not very fast, because I don't remember off the top of my head how many terms. Let's see here. We're on. It says election of the chair and vice chair will take place in the first quarter meeting. She'll be elected by the majority. It does not. I do not see a limit on how many terms or how long, but it's a 1-year term, I guess. So.
If anybody wants it, just to pad their resume, they're welcome to have it. Won't change the amount of work that I'll put on, that I'll keep on doing behind the scenes. Well, I guess Craig, as far as should there be a formal vote right now on Dan Smith has nominated Joe Michelle to continue the role as chair of the Freight Advisory Committee. Is it something that we should put to a vote, or should we just say without objection?
We should have a vote on it, just to be dot the I's and cross the T's sort of thing. Right. But we need a second on that, and then I need to make sure with Christine that there isn't someone in the in the public that wants to talk about it first, just to make sure, but we need a second first.
I can second that, Greg. Doug Thompson.
Okay, Doug, thank you. Mr. Thompson. Christine, is there anyone in the Teams live chat?
We do have one attendee.
And can you ask them if they want to talk about this topic, this business item?
Yes.
Okay. And just a reminder, folks, there's a little lag, so about 30 seconds or so, just to make sure that they're up to speed with the Teams chat that we're in right now. "30 to 40 seconds takes a long time when you're waiting and no one's talking."
There's a lesson in that.
Yeah, the lesson has something to do with this much technology. You would think we'd get it figured out by now, or someone would, but.
So there's that. Yeah, there's that lesson, and the other one is a minute is longer than you think.
Yeah, no kidding. All
There are
right.
no comments from the public.
All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Thompson, to have Mr. Michelle be the chair. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Since there's no other comments, I think that item would be closed, and thank the committee, and I will do my best to keep on putting in some hours and monitoring the freight here in Anchorage with the help of Craig over there at the municipality. And feel free to, if you guys have any comments, or if you guys need me to start looking into something, definitely don't ever hesitate to give me a call, and I'll just start walking the beat that you guys dictate that you want me to do. Let's move on to vice chair. Who's the vice chair for the 2020?
Is
This
it
is
Terry?
Terry Linseth. I've been the vice chair for the last 2 years, but I'm ready to hand the torch over. And I would love to see somebody want to step up and take over. Two people that I know have participated in all of our meetings, or three, or at least for the most part. Mr. Steve Rebufo, Dan Smith, or Doug Thompson are very regular attendees, and I would love to nominate one of them if I knew if one of the three would entertain being the vice chair. Or anybody for that matter. And if nobody wants to do it, I'm happy to hold a position.
I figured you'd just nominate somebody. That's another method.
All right. Should we ask the general public, just so we can start getting that full minute
Sure.
time out of the way while we, Christine, is there anybody in the queue on the other teams that might have a comment?
I will ask and start the clock now.
Okay, thank you. And while we're waiting here, how's the new profession in teaching going, Steve? Mr. Rebuffo?
Well, it's time consuming this year. This job is exciting enough, but I've sort of added an extra layer of time requirement to my list. But it's been fun. The only disappointing thing is you don't have any kind of interaction with your class. You just upload a bunch of Zoom lectures and tests, and all the whining is by email. Yeah.
I still owe you a not an interview. I don't think I'm important enough to be interviewed, but you still wanted me to do some question and answers, so I'll make sure and follow up with you on that one, Mr. Rebuffo.
Yeah, no, I've got you on my short list of people to catch up to and schedule something. Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for that, Joe. which is why I would just as soon take a pass for the remainder of this year and ask again the next time the vice chair job's coming open. I've done it before, but this is just a busy year for me.
Hey, Steve, Doug here. Are you teaching a college course or where are you at? UAA or are you at?
Yeah, I'm actually teaching two.
Wow.
One's a logistics course. Just they're both 100 level, so they're introductory. One is for logistics, and the other is purchasing and supply management. So, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good refresher for me because I've got the textbooks too, and it's interesting trying to teach the academics when you know that the real world is a tad different, depending upon the topic that you're talking about. So getting to kind of throw a little reality into that which the academics think you need to know has been kind of fun.
Is this a core curriculum for a certain degree at UAA or?
Yeah, for the in the School of what is it, Business and Public Policy? Is that it's in that school? Yeah, for a logistics degree.
Great, awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so no comments from the public. We see if anyone is going to jump up and become vice chair.
Terry, I want to
This is
thank.
Bob. Yeah, this is Bob. Sure, I'd like to nominate Doug Thompson.
That's nice of you, Bob. I'm certainly willing to help the committee any way I can. I don't think I'm super qualified in this group. I was nominated, or I was put on the committee as, we run a very small number of trucks and coaches through the city, right? I can't imagine I'm the most qualified person in case Joe ever got hit by a truck, so to speak, right? But if it's an administrative kind of a role, and I can do something for the group if need be, for sure.
Yeah,
We're
very administrative.
Yeah, we're just looking at the possibility for someone to chair a meeting, and you'll have the assistance of myself and Christine and John. So really, it's just chairing the meeting like Mr. Michelle is doing right now. We know you guys are all busy, so we won't task you with much more than that.
Well, Bob threw my name in there, so sure, it's tough to. Yeah, that's a tough one. I should have turned off my camera, but yeah, I can help Greg if that's helpful, and happy to do it.
Joe Michelle seconds the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry.
Very good. I was just going to second it, but since I'm taking minutes, I'll put your name down.
All right. Without any objection from the committee, I think that's cleared, and we have ourselves. Congratulations to Mr. Thompson on being vice chair of the Anchorage AMATS Freight Advisory Committee.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
And now to the meat of the stuff. If we want to move forward to some informational reports, Michelle McNulty from the municipality of Anchorage, she's the planning director. Would you share with the committee what you have prepared for us?
Of course. Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. And so I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. And so a lot of this stemmed from, I think, when Mr. Michelle actually took over as the chair of this committee, as well as the Trucker Association. He had reached out to introduce himself and to start finding out how the Freight Advisory Committee can be better involved or more involved with different planning projects specific to transportation and freight, and had an ongoing conversation with John Cecil about that. And looking at all the processes that the planning department does, it felt like the best thing to really talk to this board about is the context sensitive solutions process. And that's the municipality's trail and road review. And that is something that is processed out of our current planning division of the planning department. And so I have actually roped in Dave Whitfield, who is the manager of that department, to talk about that process and specifically, which classification of roads are involved, what's the process, and how the Freight Advisory Board can get involved in that. And then after that conversation, happy to have discussions about other types of involvement that you might have, or any questions that you as a committee have for the planning department, and any other things that you would like us to follow up and come and talk to you about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Again, my name is Dave Whitfield. I'm the current planning manager in the planning department, and I need to say thank you very much for having us here today. So Michelle mentioned the CSS process, or context sensitive solutions. This is a process that the municipality has implemented to give the public and the municipality an opportunity to have input over major reconstruction projects involving both DOT and municipal rights of way. There's a standard for that, and typically the standard is major reconstruction of collector or greater roadways, so collector and arterial roadways. It's a three-step process that takes place over the development of the project, starting at the concept phase, which is typically something less than 35% design. And that would go to the planning, I should say, to the planning department, and ultimately to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a consent agenda item for their basically just for their knowledge. After that, once the plans have been moved along to something in the neighborhood of 65%, we have the draft design study report, which goes back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and approval. Once that has gone through Planning and Zoning Commission, we have the plans in hand stage, which is done at the Urban Design Commission level. I think the question here today is, how can this committee be involved in reviewing and making comments on these road projects? And I think through the AMATS folks, Craig, Christine, John, is a great way for us to make you guys aware of these projects, so that you can weigh in early in the process. So I think my suggestion here would be maybe that when we route these projects, and maybe I'll ask for Craig or Christine to jump in here and see what they think of this, is once we route these projects to AMATS for review, perhaps they could bring it to this committee. And, I think as a major, stakeholder, I'll call you, in road design, you should be involved in these processes and making comments to both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Urban Design Commission. So, Craig, can I ask you a quick question? Do you see any issues with us routing these projects to AMATS and ultimately bringing them to the committee?
No, happy to bring them through. Typically the types of things that we get, we're either getting something that's vacating a right of way, which is not something that the committee would normally be interested in, because it's usually just a small cul-de-sac or something, or a road project or a trail project. And road project is usually a larger creature that the committee is usually in the loop on. But we are happy to bring forward the road projects at an early stage to have the committee give some input.
Yeah, and I would say that maybe it's not that this committee wants to look at every single project, but rather something that might more appropriately affect this committee. So I mean, if you guys set the standard, certainly we can only forward those cases, those projects onto you, but certainly we're willing to do whatever we can to get you more involved.
Yeah.
Question for you, Mr. Whitfield.
Yes, sir.
And this might be to Craig as well. When you say the word forward the projects on to us, is that as formal as it sounds, or is that just giving us a list of things that we should, do some homework on before the next meeting? How formal is that forwarding of the process? I don't want to add hurdles to what you guys already have to do.
Great question. So, the intent of the CSS process is to involve not only the municipality, but the public, major stakeholders in the process of designing these road projects. So by forwarding this on to AMATS, who ultimately would take it to you, you would have the ability to make comments on these projects that could ultimately influence the design that gets approved by both Planning and Zoning Commission and the Urban Design Commission.
Dave, this is Michelle. If I could clarify, the actual thing that you would be forwarding would be the applicant's application. So it would be their narrative describing the project, describing how it relates to adopted plans, as well as the design drawings. And then this group would then review that. And then maybe to your question about the homework, maybe the homework is reviewing that and bringing back any comments to formally submit. Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that clarification.
And if I can add one other clarification is that, so AMATS, you know, we're a planning entity. We're not a design entity for the most part. We don't have, and I'm looking at the list, the roster here, we don't have professional engineers or designers on this freight committee or on most of our other committees. So it's not something that it would be, you know, if you're talking about, gosh, this turning radius is too tight or something like that, that's not something typically the AMATS committees would be commenting on, which is not to say that these individual member companies and the individual representatives of on the freight committee couldn't do that. But it would not be usually within the purview of the freight advisory committee to be, you know, talking about the design elements. You could talk about the need for the project or, you know, purpose and need of the project. That would make sense, but we don't usually get into the design level. That's okay for the member companies to do, but it wouldn't be a freight committee memo to the policy committee, et cetera.
I don't see any other, I guess, I mean, it's up to the individual member companies to be in contact with the engineering design factor of it, but I don't see any other avenue that our industry would have an opportunity to interface with the municipality in a way that we would be able to make comment on these projects. My main goal is to get out in front as much as we can, and, you know, being able to talk to these engineers at the 5% design phase versus, you know, I make the jokes that when it's, you know, when it finally is out for public comment, you know, all you can do is really comment on what color the railing should be on some of these things. So anything that we can do just to stay out in front of these projects so we don't get surprised and or then suddenly have to start stomping our feet and trying to holler just because it's way too late. So
yeah, this would be
done, that's the end goal.
Yeah, this would be a great opportunity for all your member agencies, your member companies, I should say, you'll get this information and then you could bring it back to your company and they could make the comment. You would have a crack at it as opposed to a freight committee sending a memo saying, we don't like this turning radius here or whatever, you know.
Okay.
Craig, this is Michelle. I have a clarification question, and I totally respect and appreciate that you clarified kind of the guidelines of the comments, but would it be appropriate for the Freight Advisory Committee to possibly provide feedback that, hey, please understand that this is along a freight corridor, or this roadway that you're working on is heavily traveled by the freight community, and take into consideration that lane widths or turning radius can't accommodate, you know, our largest, whatever your largest trailer might be, or something like that.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is fine. I mean, it's perfect. When AMAT staff gets a road project like this, what they will do is they'll typically look at it and say, is this in the 20-year plan marked for improvement? And so, yay, we support that. Or look at a vacation of a right-of-way and say, actually, we have already, this is in our plan, you know, 15 years from now, so we don't want to vacate that right-of-way. Those are the kinds of things we typically do. But I think, I mean, these are the experts here in the room. And so for them to say, hey, this is on a freight route, and we know that there are a lot of vehicles trying to make this turn, and it's challenging with the way the radius is, you know, it would just make sense for them to say, hey, let's make sure we look at this.
Yeah. Chair Michelle, Dan Smith here again. The freight mobility study identified the AMATS freight movement problem areas. They did a very good job. And that's my concern, is maybe at some point we know where the pinch points are, and then we get involved in the project way too late. But when they're starting to make an area that we know that's already tight, where we also have a crash map that was involved in that study, I think that's when it's really imperative that we collectively share our voice. I'm not asking to design the road. I'm not a professional engineer, but I certainly know about every commercial vehicle fatality in the state. So I think that's where the value is.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we had come to you guys, I believe, on the 3rd Avenue project, and we got some very constructive comments out of this committee. And so I see, something moving forward similar to the way we handled that particular project. Not necessarily that you need to, have input on the design of the project, but identifying those problem areas as Mr. Smith identified. That's I think where this committee would be of use to the planning department.
Yeah, and actually, Dave, that particular project is a really good example of why we at AMATS and these advisory committees just need to be careful, because that project came to the freight committee and they discussed it, and they, the committee members wanted to put something in to say, here are the challenges we have with that project. This same project then went and presented at the AMATS Bike and Pet Advisory Committee, and they basically had the opposite comments. So it wouldn't work too well to have 2 different advisory committees coming in with competing comments. It makes sense for the different member agencies to come in and provide those comments, and that was great because they were able to be made aware of the project and provide their comments accordingly. But that's the challenge of different AMATS committees at loggerheads.
No, I agree with that, Craig. I would say that maybe establishing some sort of resolution by the committee is probably not appropriate on these projects, but rather, taking this back to your respective organizations and making comments. I think not only that, but I think it would give the planning department the opportunity to individually hear where the problem areas are in a similar fashion that we did with the 3rd Avenue project.
Yeah, that's a great
but certainly not representative of the committee as a whole.
Yeah.
Understood.
Hey, Craig, this is Doug. I had a quick question. I've been on the committee for a few years now, and is this still the primary avenue for the public to get involved in a project? I know that was part of the process previously, where we had some community councils and some folks who lived along the airport road, access roads and whatnot would come to the committee and give feedback. And I wonder how they find out about these projects. And then first, and then secondly, is this still the avenue for the public to get involved as well, right?
Well, we do have an AMATS Citizens Advisory Committee that is made up of members of the public, representatives from each assembly district. Dave can give you chapter and verse on how every project that comes to the planning department gets fed out to the community councils. I don't know exactly how that side works, but I do know that the public is made aware of things that we get through that come in for action by one of our committees. And I mean ours, meaning the planning department, like planning, zoning, and zoning board of examiners, etc. So,
and I would say that in any typical road project, the public is involved at 2 different levels. With both state municipal road projects, oftentimes they do a lot of public involvement on the front end prior to submittal of a CSS project to the planning department. But secondly, the planning department gets the project out to the community, and their ability to to be involved at that point is there as well. So it's twofold. It's once with the respective agency doing the road project, so either the municipality or the state, and then second through the planning process.
Thank you. All right. Look forward to just, being able to see these projects. I don't think that an action point is really needed on this thing. Thank you for coming to the committee and kind of outlining the information that will be available to us. I look forward to reading through that stuff. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mr. Whitfield.
I would just add to that, if at any point in time, Michelle and I can be of use to you and you want us to come back, I think she would agree. We're more than happy to do that.
Definitely.
Marvelous. Well, in the interest of time, let's move forward to item B, the statewide freight committee update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Taylor. I'm a planner with the Department of Transportation and Public Facilities out of our headquarters program development office in Juneau. I manage the update to the Alaska Statewide Transportation Plan and Freight Plan. We have signed a contract with Kittleson and Associates to be the consultants for the effort. And their team has been collecting vast amounts of data from us that are assembling into a transportation system assessment, and will also feed into the freight plan. Joining me today is Wendy Wilbur, who's the consultant project manager, and some members of her team. Just by overview, the project is already underway, and it's slated to complete around August of 2022. At this point, I will introduce Wendy, and I believe she has some slides to present.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to go ahead and request control.
I clicked allow, so hopefully it will get to you soon. There we go.
All right.
Excellent.
It's good when things work and I'm not on mute. That's always a good start.
Yeah.
So we have a brief presentation, and then wanted to give some time for you to talk after, answer some questions and give some input to us. As Eric said, we're really just kicking off this plan. On our team, we have Michael Baker, we have Northern Economics, and we have Huddle. We're pretty much an Alaska-based team with just enough national expertise to apply some best practices and some lessons learned. But with the core team being longtime Alaskans, that allows us to adapt those best practices to our very, very unique and geographically diverse state. So we're just getting started on the project. We've been working on it about 2 months. As Eric said, we're deep into data collection and analysis. So just wanted to give you a really high level overview of what the LRTP and the freight plan will look like over the next 2 years. So for background, the previous long-range transportation plan was completed in 2016, and that was prior to the federal performance rules being finalized. And the freight plan was completed in 2017. So the overall goals of this update are to comply with the most current requirements, develop a statewide vision that will inform future transportation plans and programming, or as we call them, the family of plans that shape transportation investments across the state. The plans will directly link statewide goals and planning to project prioritization and programming using performance-based planning. And there'll be more emphasis on connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, we're talking about across disciplines and across modes, and then really looking at those intermodal connections that depend on each other to convey people and goods. So for each mode, we're defining the background and trends. We're looking at land use, safety, security, mobility, emerging technology, economics, and system resiliency. Specific to freight, we're obviously going to look at freight mobility. We're going to coordinate the performance measures that have to be reported on, and we're going to take a look again at the freight bottleneck locations. So as we do our transportation assessment and gather all this data, we're really looking at the current condition and performance for each mode, the strengths and weaknesses, future needs and opportunities and trends that may influence that, and then threats and risks. And of course, as many of you know, we're also waiting for the new transportation bill. We're hoping it matches the current FAST Act, but it could change, and we're going to have to be nimble if that happens. So the core of this is really performance-based planning, and in a nutshell, performance-based planning is using data to inform decision-making. So it's a little more transparent. It uses the data to identify the needs and then help direct investment and policy decisions to attain the desired outcomes. So what's in it for you if we do performance-based planning? There's two good reasons to do it. It's required by the Federal Highway Administration, and it's good business. As we kind of move into this new world, there's greater competition for limited funding, which translates to the need to strategically focus those investments. And as part of that, the public is also increasingly demanding accountability and asking how public funds are spent. So if we're basing all of our decisions on data, it's much easier to explain to the public and the decision maker where that money is going and what the results are. So using data and scenario planning, the state can select their investments that most effectively achieve their desired outcomes. It provides clear documentation about what's needed, why the transportation dollars were spent, and what the performance results were. So as an example, if safety is the top priority because of a high number of fatalities, so we've got the data that tells us how many fatalities, the state just can make the decision to invest more heavily in safety projects, and they can set a target for for a number of annual fatalities that's less than what's happening now. And then they can actually measure it and report back out. So through the scenario planning, we can test all of these potential outcomes, and we'll run different scenarios as we go through this plan based on public input from advisory committees like you. So what kind of transportation systems do we need? What new investment strategies or policies might be needed to make that happen? How will transportation revenue be impacted? And how might DOT require structural, business, or other changes? So a key part of any plan, of course, is stakeholder engagement. So we have a variety of ways we're going to do this. We're going to do some public outreach at key points. We're going to establish a statewide freight advisory committee. And we'll also establish a statewide long-range transportation plan advisory committee. So we call them the STAC and the FAC. We're also going to hold technical focus groups where we really need to dig deeper into certain issues. And then we'll be working with the MPOs like AMATS and Fast Planning and Fairbanks. So as we establish the statewide advisory committee and the statewide freight advisory committee, we will be meeting with them really at 7 key points in the plan. So we'll be with them at the planning, kind of the vision and the goals. We'll report back on the system assessment and make sure that we got that right and identify anything that we might have missed. We'll talk about challenges and opportunities. We'll have some special meetings on the scenario planning and the risk assessment. We'll meet with you to help establish performance measures. What do we want to measure? How are we going to measure it? Do we have the data to measure it? And then implementation strategies, and then finally review of the draft and the freight plan. And lastly, kind of the key dates. I just did a high-level summary. As Eric mentioned, this is a 2-year project. So right now we're wrapping up the transportation assessment, starting to draft that. It'll be ready for review and meetings in April. We're going to do a full financial analysis. How much money has there been? How much money do we think there's going to be? And are there new funding opportunities? August will be the freight plan. And all of these are kind of happening simultaneously, but this is kind of how they're going to roll out in terms of the review period. September, we'll start running some different scenarios. How does the state want to invest? If they invest all of their money in taking care of the system, maintaining what we have, what does that do for expansion? Or say the state wants to invest all their money in adding capacity, what does that do to being able to maintain what we have? So we'll run some kind of different scenarios so people can understand what the trade-offs are. And then we'll have performance measures. And a key part of this plan is looking at what data is available. It can sometimes be constrained, especially when we get into rural Alaska. If you're talking freight, there's not many trucks. It's hard to get good counts. So we want to make sure that when we set performance measures, we have good data and we can track that. And then about in August of 2022, we will have a final long-range transportation plan and freight plan update. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and on anything I presented. And of course, if this freight plan could only accomplish one thing, what would that be? But before I turn it back over to you, I did want to mention that we had a meeting in January with the Maritime Administration, MARAD, and they reviewed the freight plan. They reviewed all the state freight plans and identified best practices and kind of gave us a grade on the last freight plan. So they typically just focus on the maritime freight, but it's a pretty comprehensive review nonetheless. So the good news is they actually scored the Alaska statewide freight plan that was completed in 2017 very high. They identified some best practices that they share with other states from that plan. So our goal is to get a higher score and just clean up a few of the areas that could have been just a little bit better. So we have a really good starting point. And with that, I'd like to turn it over just for questions and comments.
Wendy, thank you for your time. One question that I have is, it sounds like a whole lot of listening, sounds like a whole lot of, compiling of information, but at the same time, who's making, the final call on things? Because, let's say I want, the freight industry wants, a 5-lane highway between here and Fairbanks with no lights and, riding around all the different communities that would, normally drop the speed down to 40 miles per hour. So, I just make that comment, and let's say the airport wants to, do something that's just mind blowing as well. Who's the arbiter of some of, these pie in the sky plans that, when this freight plan actually comes together, who's making those judgment calls?
Well, here's where we're going to go back to the data a little bit. So what's the data telling us about what the needs are? So one of our challenges is to present all of this data in a really understandable and digestible manner, so that as we go forward, it's easy for people to see, okay, is there really a freight problem on that road? Is there really a bottleneck there? What's the data telling us? And let's say that's where you want to invest, at what cost and what trade-off to another mode. So that's a little bit where the scenario planning comes in. So our goal is to balance all of these different modes. It's not an easy task, it's a big lift, but we're really going to rely on the data to tell the story rather than kind of that perception and gut feel. Now, knowing in Alaska that there's not always a lot of data, we're going to have to rely on industry experts to fill in some of those gaps. And that's why we're going to have the advisory committees. That's why we're going to have some focused interviews. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to Eric and his team to help balance all of that out.
Did I see somebody have their hand raised?
This is Brian Lindemood. I have my hand raised.
Brian, go ahead, sir.
I was involved in the last one, I think, as part of we had some sort of focus group or ad hoc committee, or I don't remember what it was. But one of the issues I know we ran into before, they threw out on the board, do we want to build a road to Holy Cross, or do we want to build a power line there, or do we want to build a railroad there? Do we want to build an airport there? And one of the issues that we kept running into was there wasn't a lot of definition from the state as far as what the perceived land use and ultimate development of, say, Holy Cross or any other place in the state would be. And it's kind of difficult, or we found it difficult as an ad hoc group, to really provide much input as far as transportation needs to those things if the state couldn't tell us what the ultimate land use would be. And I don't I would hope that as we move forward with this update or plan, that we have a little bit more input there. Because like I said, it was difficult for us to suss through what the best selection of transportation would be without some of that information.
So yeah, so a couple of things there. It's hard. It's a big state. We're deep into population, demographics, land use. We're also, I think, in a different funding cycle. I think there's less money, there's more competition, and there's greater need. And so that's going to help us focus. When you've got limited dollars, where do you really want to spend it and where do you need to spend it? And you have multiple modes competing for that money. So with the long range transportation plan, it's going to be the higher level policies, and we're not going to recommend specific projects. That will be in the statewide improvement plan. For the freight plan, there will be specific projects recommended. And so, you know, we're just going to have to do our best as issues come up to look at the different land uses. I can tell you now, you know, there's the population's declining. There's going to be limited growth. We're going to have to find some scenarios for 2050 of what things are going to look like. And we're going to have to look at where we expect development, where we expect resource development and economic growth to inform all of that. And I think as we get more data in, that picture will start to become a little bit clearer.
You kind of brushed on the different data points that you guys are looking at. Mm-hmm. Are there any specifically on, you know, where the rubber meets the road in our industry? Are you having any trouble acquiring certain types of data, or is there anything that, you know, we could do as far as you can get with me later on after this meeting if there's data that you are having trouble tracking down in our industry? Please reach out to me and we'll see what we can do as far as aggregating some of that information.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And we have Brian Funkhauser with Michael Baker, and he's on our team and he's listening in. So we will definitely be reaching out. The freight plan we're still gathering a lot of data for that one. So we'll definitely be reaching out. I know I have worked on the way in motion plan for the state of Alaska and worked a lot with Alaska Trucking, and also worked on the freight bottleneck plan for the federal requirements. So where we run into data problems is pretty much once you get outside of the bigger cities.
Looks like Dan Smith had a question.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, Wendy, when we're looking at the freight portion of this plan, are they also looking back? I don't know for sure, but I've heard anecdotally that Highland, for instance, was redesigned 20 years ago or however long it may have been. Is it looking at projects like that to kind of reprioritize existing or legacy projects also?
Yes. So we will be recommending projects. So as we go through all of the different planning documents and talk to folks, we'll see what projects are out there and what the needs are. And again, you know, we're getting down to pavement and bridge condition at some levels. We're getting down to where are the freight bottlenecks. So we're looking at where the need is with the data and then going from there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. But people don't realize that some of those issues, like we want to build modules in Anchorage and we want to employ the welders and the truck drivers and everybody else, but we have a hard time like getting over Highland. So there are those areas that, and I don't think that they've been spoken about for quite some time. So I really appreciate your efforts, Wendy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
All right. If there are any other questions from the committee, please forward them to myself and to Mr. Lyon, and we'll make sure and get that information over to the team. That includes any comments or anything like that. Yeah, let's just make sure that we try to stay involved and, you know, do what we can to provide data and make sure that it's representative of our industry, because these are federal dollars, big, green, beautiful federal dollars. So we got to make sure that we can grab as much of it as we can. That's one thing Alaska's good at.
And do remember, this is just the introduction. You'll see a lot more of us over the next 2 years, but wanted to make sure you knew that it was going on, that you'll be hearing from us. We'll be reaching out individually. So appreciate the time.
Craig, that was the last item on the agenda. If I think actually the last item was any committee comments or any statements for the Freight Advisory Committee. Does anybody have anything to add to the record? Mr. Taylor, thanks for being here for the meeting. I look forward to working with you and DOT as this process goes along.
You're welcome. One thing I didn't mention is that we are, looking at filling out the Freight Advisory Committee for the plan. As we had mentioned before, we intend to invite all the members of this committee to be part of that group, and then we'll be adding some additional folks to help with a statewide perspective.
All right, marvelous. Are there any committee comments for the committee as a whole before we let you guys get on about your day? All right, with that, item number 8 is just a notification that the Technical Advisory Committee is February 11th from 2:30 to 4:30, and the Policy Committee is February 25th from 1:30 to 3:30. If there aren't any other comments, Craig, am I missing anything, or is there any other housekeeping that we need to do?
You got it all.
All right, wonderful. I hope you guys have a great day, and happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.